Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, your home for Pittsburgh Penguins news and analysis. You can find us on YouTube at Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Make sure that you're liking it, sharing it, subscribing it, doing all of it because it helps us out in a major way. Or if you prefer the audio platforms, you can find us absolutely anywhere you get your podcast from. I'm your host, Nick Belsky, joined as always by Nick Horwat, and this is the very last episode of the month of July. We're getting closer and closer to the 2025-26 Pittsburgh Penguins season, and all I'm going to say is this. I cannot wait. Some people are saying, it's going to be an awful season. Who's even excited? I am, and I know you are on the other side of the screen, and I hope most of you are as well, whether you're listening or you're watching. But we have plenty to discuss on today's episode. One player could be the key to the Pittsburgh Penguins defense in 2025, and we're also going to play a lot of what's more likely. Let's get started on the tip of the iceberg. Now, last week we talked about a handful of players that could make their NHL debuts this upcoming season, could get that opportunity to really make their first impressions known on the NHL and on the Penguins fan base. Well, this week, we want to kind of shift gears a little bit to talk about a player that was able to do that last season, and that player is Owen Pickering. I thought, all in all, solid first impression from Owen Pickering over his first 25 games in the NHL, which is what he played last year. And I think going into this season, the door is definitely open for him to make that opening night roster. So with that in mind, Horwat, what are your expectations for Owen Pickering whenever camp starts here in about 6 weeks, and what are your expectations for him in the 25-26 season?
Starting with camp, I would say my expectations are for him to come in almost essentially with a roster spot already in place. Come in with the expectation of, we hope, as the Penguins organization, we hope you are going to make the roster. We are slotting you in as of right now. It is your spot to lose. I think that's kind of the state that the Penguins are in of, we want the young guys to come up and be ready. Owen Pickering showed many glimpses of being ready last season. So I think going into camp, it's essentially his spot to lose. Now, again, it might be an easy spot to lose because of some of the names and competition he may have. But going in, I'd say he's one of the top three names on the left side.
I would tend to agree. And now I'm not going to say that there is a 100% chance that Owen Pickering's on the roster on opening night, because there are, like you mentioned, some names over there that have a little bit of pedigree. We're not going to try to sell you something because we know it's not a lot of pedigree on that left side, but there's a reason the Penguins brought in Parker Wotherspoon, and it's to play at the NHL level. So he's already penned in, not penciled in, but penned in. We know Ryan Graves is over there, and as of right now, it doesn't seem like he's going anywhere. We know Ryan Shea, albeit with the former coaching staff, but Ryan Shea has carved out a nice little niche for himself here in the city of Pittsburgh. But I do think that Owen Pickering, I would tend to agree with you. While it's a non-zero chance that he does end up falling out of that top three, I do think that it's more likely than not that he ends up in that position. And as far as expectations from myself are concerned for Owen Pickering, I think he's the key to the Penguins defense. I really do, because the right side is obvious, right? No matter what it is, no matter if Erik Karlsson is on this team or not, we kind of have an expectation and know exactly what we're going to get out of the right side of the defense. It's Chris Letang. He is what he is at this point. There's a very little margin between what we expect he could be and what he's actually going to be. Erik Karlsson, if he's back, we all know what he is. Matt Dumba, we all know what he is. Connor Clifton, at this point of his career, we kind of all know what he is. But then you look at the left side, there is no bona fide top four defenseman on that crop of lefties that we mentioned earlier, whether it's Wotherspoon, who was very successful, but in a bottom pairing role in Boston. Ryan Shea, we saw him have spurts of success with Chris Letang last season, but can he withstand that over a longer period of time? And then I don't need to get into Ryan Graves. We all know it. So if Owen Pickering can come in, establish himself, set the tone, make the team out of camp, and become a bona fide top four defenseman, I think that changes the entire outlook on the Penguins defense in 2025. If he cannot, if he struggles, it's going to get worse than it was last year for the Penguins on the blue line.
For sure.
Or could. I shouldn't say it's going to. It could. Sorry.
Yeah, you're good. It's still for sure. I mean, he does have a lot of competition ahead of him. I do think it's an easy spot to lose, but again, he's going to start with pole position, essentially. Mm-hmm. Let's leave it at that for at least where I think Owen Pickering is going into the preseason and training camp with, because you mentioned the names that were already up there in terms of Ryan Shea, Ryan Graves, and there's still more. I mean, Parker Wotherspoon, obviously. Alexander Alexiev's a left-handed shot. Mm-hmm. Caleb Jones is a left-handed shot. As I keep scrolling, I thought there was one more. And then you get into the Philip Kral and the Sebastian Ahos. Again, they've been around. But there are options when it comes to left shot defensemen in the Penguins lineup. I think it'll just start with Owen Pickering. It's going to be a bit of a tightrope for him, but he is the bright spot of the future of the defense, one of the bright spots of the future of the defense for the Penguins. So if he makes it this year, outstanding, phenomenal. It means he's stepping up already. And if he doesn't, it's no harm, no foul. You know, he's got NHL experience under his belt from last season. He'll probably get more again this year, one way or the other. It's just a matter of when that happens. So getting some more seasoning on him in the AHL also doesn't hurt. One way or the other, this is a win-win situation for the Penguins and Owen Pickering. I think he's just going to start with the position and then slip from there. But whatever you do, don't look at Daily Faceoff's lineup and take that for what it is. It has Chris Letang on the left side.
It is wow. Okay. I was going to say it's July 27th. I don't take any of those Daily Faceoff lines for what they are, especially for a team in the Penguins who has a brand new head coach. And maybe he brings in brand new ideas, but putting Chris Letang on the left side where he has not been, I don't think ever in his career. I might be, it's been a long time, right? I don't think ever, but if he was, it was a very, very long time ago. So yeah, I certainly don't take Daily Faceoff's lineup right now into consideration, but to me, it feels like when you list those names, even if you get down to Alexiev, even if you get down to Jones, none of them move the needle as much as Owen Pickering could, right? Because I started off that entire, him being the key to the defense thing with saying, we know what the right side is. We know what the ceiling is. We know what the floor is. It's very mapped out what we're going to get on the right side of the defense. The left side, I don't think there is anyone that has the upside that Owen Pickering has. And all I'm saying is if he reaches that, it's a total game changer for that particular area of the Penguins defense. Is that going to, save the season? Is that going to make him a playoff team? No, it's not. But it goes a long way into kind of mending what has been a extremely broken fence for the Penguins over the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. It's up. The future is going to be Owen Pickering and then Harrison Brunek. Other people will filter into that, but it's all kind of center around Owen Pickering for the time being, especially with the NHL experience already there. He's going to fight for an NHL role again. And like I said, one way or the other, he's going to play games this upcoming season. Just a matter of when it happens.
Yeah, he's one of the only defensemen in this first wave of a youth movement. That's what we're going to see over the next couple seasons is waves of youth movements. The first wave is Pickering. It's McGroarty, who we'll get to, Koivunen, who we'll get to. And then you kind of skip a little bit, and then you're getting to guys like Tanner Howe. You're getting to guys like Harrison Brunek, as you mentioned. You're getting to guys like the three that were just drafted in the first round this year. So I do think that as part of that first wave, you're really hoping Owen Pickering can set the tone, especially considering he's kind of on an island there on the blue line. A lot to put on his shoulders, but again, this kid, throughout his entire hockey career, professional and in juniors, he's shown that he is kind of mature beyond his years. He was a captain in Swift Current at the WHL, and then even when he came into the Penguins, those development camp years, he was always the leader on his side of those things. So I'm hoping that he's able to kind of take that mantle again and be that front runner for this first wave of a youth movement for the Penguins. So either way, going to be an exciting season for Owen Pickering. I mentioned 25 games last year, which was his first foray into NHL hockey. 25% of that time he spent playing alongside Chris Letang. So Mike Sullivan was not hesitant to throw him into the fire. We'll see what Dan Muse is able to do. But let's move over and talk about a little bit of what's more likely. Not talk about, let's play what's more likely. That's more like it. We have 4 scenarios here, Horwat. You know the drill. I'll give you 2 on either side of these, and you let me know which one is more likely to happen within the parameters given. Let's start with goaltending, because we've talked a little bit about Joel Blomqvist. We've talked a little bit about Sergei Murashov. We obviously talked about the trade of Alex Nedeljkovic. We've talked about Artur Shilovs, but the guy that's at the front of the line is the guy that's been at the front of the line for the last 6-7 seasons, and that is Tristan Jarry. So I want to know, what is more likely to happen to Tristan Jarry this season? Is it more likely that he gets traded, or is it more likely that he finishes 2025-26 with above a 910 save percentage?
910. I feel like a lot of goalies are dropping in save percentages.
Overall, the numbers have gone down a little bit. There is that upper class every year that's around 920, but
yeah,
the number of players above 910 has gotten a lot lower.
Yeah, I'd go with the first one, without even completely remembering what it is, just because I'm so blown away by 910.
Traded.
Yeah. And that doesn't seem like a total long shot. If Tristan Jarry can enter the season on a high note, can rifle off a couple of wins here and there, there's plenty of teams hungry for goaltending. And who knows what Edmonton does? I'm going to keep pairing him to Edmonton. I don't care. Mm-hmm. Who knows what Edmonton does to start the season with their goaltending scenario? Maybe they need a name like Jarry in there, where if Jarry's starting off well, hey, he's playing really well. Here's a draft pick. Here's a couple pieces just to get a new starter in there, because I also have extremely high hopes and expectations for the trio of Shilovs, Blomqvist, and Murashov. One of those 3 absolutely is going to hit in the NHL at the NHL level. So I think a trade involving Jarry would be the right move for the Penguins. It's just a matter of when and where. And he's got to start off the season hot, though.
Now, here's the thing. I created these throughout this weekend. Whenever I was doing whatever I was doing, if I thought of something, I'd write it down in my notes. And this was one of the ones I thought of earlier in the weekend. And you would think I would have looked back at this and thought, man, if he finishes with a 910 save percentage, or if he's at a 910 save percentage by the deadline, it probably means that he's going to get traded because other people are going to see the value. Yeah. So I was going with he's going to finish above a 910 save percentage. And I know that right now that kind of seems outlandish, because over the last 3 seasons, he has not been able to reach that. I mean, it's been 3 full years since he's had a 910, but his career save percentage is 909. And not only that, you don't have to look that far to find a stretch where he performed at least somewhat close to that level. He finished last year with a 904 save percentage over his last 14 games, which was that stretch after he got called up for the second time in March, and then ended up being the primary starting goaltender for the Penguins throughout the rest of the season. A 904 over 14 games in a month that he historically does not perform well in. Now, again, there was not much to play for. It was very low stakes. How does he play at the beginning of the season when the pressure all of a sudden builds a little bit more when everybody is back set at 0? That remains to be seen. But if the defense is better, and I think a lot of that hinges on Pickering, see the earlier segment. If the defense is better, I think the bottom 6 is going to be better this year. Then I could see Tristan Jarry potentially coming in and having above a 910 save percentage. Because unless he does that, I don't think there's a chance he gets traded. That's the other end of this. Like, I'm telling you why I think he could get a 910, but I also think that without that 910, he's not getting traded. So that's why I think overall it's more likely in this situation.
I think, like I said, it depends on the other scenarios around the league. I think you could get him dealt at a 9-0 something.
You could, but honestly, has there really been any interest in him up to this point? So he's really going to have to come off the mat when it comes to trade interest around the league.
Absolutely. He's going to have to. It won't be easy. And maybe, he's got 9 years of NHL experience. First of all, let that settle in.
Yeah, it makes me feel old. I'd rather not let it settle in, Horwat.
Yeah. I get 2 of those seasons where, early, like 1 game, 2 games, but still, it's been 9 years. No, I do still think it's possible that he can come in, play well, and because again, the Penguins' goal, man, let's not say the Penguins' goal this season is to lose, but a big portion of this Penguins season very much could be the shooting for Gavin McKenna. And if you have a goalie that's playing well, playing with a 9-10, like you say, trades are likely. So really both of these is possible if he comes in hot, puts up that 9-10, and then gets dealt. But I still think it's possible that he can get dealt with something under, especially if goal scoring is up again this year. It also depends on the league trends. There's all kinds of things that go into it. I just feel teams are going to need a goalie. Tristan Jarry is a 2-time All-Star and has a pedigree of a 151 and 97 and 31 career record. That sounds decent.
Yeah.
You don't hate that.
Yeah, well, especially a lot of the legwork for that was early in his career. The last couple seasons have been rough, but I mean, all it takes, especially with the way the salary cap has gone and the fact that the Penguins now have a little bit of cap flexibility and probably aren't eager to, but would be accepting to retaining some of that cash. If there is a cup contender that early in the season loses their goaltender for the year and they're not ready to throw in the towel, Tristan Jarry might be a name that they start to circle. So I think it's going to be an interesting year for Tristan Jarry. I think both of these scenarios are certainly possible. And I think if one happens, which is the 9-10, that he's certainly going to end up getting traded, especially later in the season, once you kind of have more answers as to what is Joel Blomqvist and how ready is he. And the same goes for Sergei Murashov. So it'll be an interesting year for the Penguins in net, as it typically is for this organization. Let's talk a little bit about forwards and goal scoring, because that's something that the Penguins, they didn't get too much of last year. We'll see if they're able to get some this year. But the question that I pose to you, what's more likely? The Penguins have more than 2 30-plus goal scorers this season, or both rookies, Rutger McGroarty and Ville Koivunen, finish with 20-plus goals.
I'm going to go with the rookies. Okay. I have a lot of faith in these rookies. I don't know why I do, but I do think it's very possible that especially Koivunen, can find some legs in the NHL. It's like, look at the numbers for him. It's 8 games played, no goals, sure, but 7 assists. If he can find the back of the net once, get the monkey off of his back, and next thing you know, maybe they all start piling on. Rutger McGroarty, very much not in a similar boat, but in need of more of an NHL rhythm. He started the season in the NHL and then was taken out for a long time, then came back and ended with an injury. It's going to be a tougher road for him to get to that, but I think it's very possible, especially if he's up playing on a line with Sidney Crosby or Evgeni Malkin for that matter. It could be either one. However, the lineup decides to work its way out. I think that'd be a phenomenal step for the both of them. I like that. I like those two getting to 20 more than I do others getting to 30, because the only 30 goal scorers for the Penguins last year were Crosby, Rakell, and Rust. I mean, are Rakell and Rust even going to be here?
That is a question. That is a question. I like what you said there about McGroarty, about the fact that, yeah, he had himself a cup of coffee. He scored 1 goal, added on 2 assists in that cup of coffee, but he's a guy that typically takes a little bit to get going. At least last season, that was the book on Rutger McGroarty. His first 3 games at the NHL level, right out of the gate, and they were okay. They weren't great. They were okay. And then he went down to the American Hockey League, and guess what? He got off to a slow start down there as well. But what did he do? He built day after day, game after game, week after week. And by the time they called him back up late in the season, he was one of, if not the most important forwards on that Wilkes-Barre-Scranton team, who was cruising to a playoff spot. So this is a guy who sometimes just needs to get acclimated. He hasn't had a chance to get acclimated to the NHL level. So I like what you're saying there. Unfortunately, I don't tend to agree, because these guys combined have 1 goal between the two of them. So I have a hard time saying both of them are going to be able to finish with 20-plus goals. Now, I need more than 2 30-goal scorers. If Crosby plays 82 games, he's scoring 32. Book it. That's 1. I think at the very least, one of Rakell or Rust will stick around. And I believe if they stick around, and it's only one of them, they will continue to play with Sidney Crosby. And if Crosby plays a full season, he scores 30. If one of these guys plays a full season with them, they're going to score 30 as well. So there's 2. And then I just need one more, whether that's Evgeni Malkin coming out of the woodwork, whether that's one of Koivunen and McGroarty shooting up the leaderboard. Now, again, I'm not going to bet on that. That's going to be like Hail Mary, last case scenario. But I really like Anthony Mantha. And I don't know, again, it's a gut feeling. It might be the fact that it's the end of July, beginning of August, and I'm just reminiscing in what I'm seeing on the internet, what I'm seeing when I'm going back and watching Anthony Mantha. But there's a track record there, man. There is a track record there. And with the opportunities that he's going to get in Pittsburgh, because there's not a heck of a lot of very dangerous scorers on this lineup, I think Mantha is going to get elevated opportunities, and maybe, just maybe, that ends up being the case. So I'm going to say that's more likely than both McGroarty and Koivunen scoring 20 plus. I'm not saying that I don't expect both of them to potentially have good seasons, but I don't know if both of them are going to have 20 plus goal seasons in their first full years in the NHL.
Mm-hmm. It goes without saying that Anthony Mantha, that would be a career year for Anthony Mantha in terms of goal scoring. Averaging 23.6 goals a year would also be well above average. But with the opportunities that might be given to him, like you said, maybe there is something to be had there. Especially for a guy coming back on a show me deal, trying to prove that he can still cut it. One of those sort of situations. Mm-hmm. That's a fascinating choice.
Yeah.
That I will be interested to see how it goes.
And this is why I like playing what's more likely, because the first scenario, both of them we could see happening. Realistically, both of them we could see happening. This scenario, there is a very real chance that neither happen, right? There's a chance that none of this happens, but that's the game. What's more likely? I like this one. I like that we're on the opposite side. But again, I hope I'm wrong. I'm hoping McGroarty and Koivunen, I hope they're the 2 that go over 30 with Crosby. Yeah. That would be amazing. And that'd be great. But again, I think it's more likely that we can find 30 goal scorers out of the woodwork than putting all that on these 2 young guys to score 20 goals in their first season. Again, with, one of them could play with Crosby, but who's the other one playing with? And how much are you counting on that other center to be able to kind of set them up as the goal scorers?
Yeah, you get those guys scoring 30, you have Calder conversations, though. That's the other part of it. Even with 20, you might have it, depending on how the rest of the rookies play out. And it could be an interesting year for rookies. The Calder conversation is not going to be as stacked as it was this past year.
Yeah.
But it could get interesting. And if the Penguins get a rookie or 2 who are notching 20 to 30 goals, I mean, that could be an interesting conversation to be had. And again, good for the Penguins if they're looking for the future.
Yeah, if you score 30 goals, whether you're McGroarty or Koivunen, you're automatically in the conversation, because there's not going to be many other rookies that are going to put up that many goals, right? We're looking at Calder conversations at this point. It's probably Matthew Schaefer. He's a defenseman.
If he plays.
Yeah, it's if he plays. Again,
yeah, still a chance he doesn't.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's, without looking at the actual odds on whatever sportsbook we use, I would imagine Matthew Schaefer going into the season is the guy that if he plays, that he's going to be looked at as the favorite on night 1. Now that changes drastically throughout the year. You never know who can come out of the woodwork, but I think that if those guys put up 30, 100%, they're going to be at the very least in the conversation, probably a finalist. Now we have 2 more to get to here. What would an episode and a segment of What's More Likely be without mentioning Evgeni Malkin and Sidney Crosby in the same question? So what's more likely, Horwat? Evgeni Malkin, in what could be his farewell tour, scores over 71 points in a storybook finish, or Sidney Crosby does something that only one person in the history of the league was able to do, which is put up 100 points at the age of 38 or more.
See, you had me not wanting to bet against Sidney Crosby. But I might have to and say the Evgeni Malkin piece. Don't get me wrong, I think Sidney Crosby could. But who's going to be playing with him? I know we just said, hey, maybe these rookies could put up 30 with him. Maybe he could also put up 30 again. I still think he's going to get over a point per game. I think that's a lock. But 100 points might seem a bit out of reach just for the sake of, again, it's not this team's prerogative to lose. They're not making it too much of a prerogative to win. He might, but how much help is he going to get around him?
Mm-hmm.
But Evgeni Malkin, for his last rides, should be putting it all on the table. And I think he will. So I have a lot of interest in seeing what Evgeni Malkin can do, and I think it'll just be a great season from him. 71 points should be the bar, or should be the minimum. Start from there and go up.
Yeah, I agree that I also think that Evgeni Malkin is going to have a better year this year. I mean, 50 points last year. You also have to take into account that he missed 14, and not only did he miss 14, you could tell right before he went out and right after he came back that he was still dealing with it a little bit, right? The only time that he looked fresh last season was the beginning of the year, obviously, and he looked great at the beginning of the year. And then after that Four Nations break, because he had missed the games leading into it, he came back, he had fresh legs, he was fully healthy, and he tore it up again for a stretch. So if he's able to stay healthy and not go in and out with multiple different injuries, he's guaranteed to have a much better season statistically than 50 points. That was, as we talked about last week, I think, or 2 weeks ago, statistically his worst season in the NHL when it comes to points per game. And it's not particularly close. Now, Evgeni Malkin has also had only over 71 points only one time in the last 5 years. So even if he performs better, do I think that he's going to do that much better? That's a hard one to swallow. That's a hard one to predict, especially when the inverse of it and the other side of this is just betting on Sidney Crosby to continue to be great and do great things. And I think that while I do believe Malkin will have a better year, I would hitch my wagon to the guy who has proven everybody right about him for over 2 decades. Now, here's a weird stat about Crosby that I could not believe when I was looking at it earlier. He has scored 90-plus points over the past 3 seasons. Would you believe me, Horwat, if I told you that is the only time he has ever had 90-plus points in 3 consecutive seasons in his career?
Would I believe it? Off the jump, no. On the surface level, no. I wouldn't believe it. The more I think about it, the more I go, well, injuries, lockouts, and COVID. Yeah, it makes a little more sense, but on the surface, you're just reading that off. No, that doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah, there's a lot of 80-point finishes in here, and a lot of people are going to say, well, what about early in his career? He had 102 points as a rookie, 120 the next year, and then the following season, he missed time with the high ankle sprain, scored only 72, and then he went 103, 109 the 2 years after that. So that's the time, realistically, that you would have been like, yeah, of course you scored 90 points in 3 consecutive seasons, but that first injury, that high ankle sprain in year 3, that's what kind of ended that streak, if you will. But the other side of this, 35, 36, 37-year-old seasons all over 90 points. And that's the first time he does it. Like, that just, again, goes to show you why if I'm betting on somebody, I'm betting on Sidney frickin' Crosby. I mean, we talked about it in the last What's More Likely question. He scored 33 goals last year. Do we forget that he had 1 in the first 11? So even if he gets off to a cold start, this guy is prone to doing miraculous things over the course of a season. So I will bet on Crosby. Is it likely? Probably not. And there's a reason that the only player to score 100 at the age of 38 or older is Gordie Howe, and he did it at the age of 40. There's a reason for that, because it's a hard feat to accomplish, even in today's game where so many players are scoring over 100 points in every single season. We're getting half a dozen, sometimes more, over that century mark. But at the age of 38, which the birthday's coming up here, so nice early birthday to Sidney Crosby, I think that it's going to be a difficult feat to accomplish, but I would hitch my wagon to Sidney Crosby scoring 100 before I got Malkin doing something he's only done once in the past 5.
That's fair. It'd be a stellar season, and looking at the numbers of it, his last 100-point season came in 18, 19, and 79 games. He had 65 assists that year.
Ew, sickening.
That really is.
This is Crosby.
I mean, he had 60 assists just a couple years ago. So it's I get where you're coming from with that too. It is very possible. I just think of who's going to be playing around him. It's going to be a tough road.
Now let's close it out with this one. And honestly, this is a play it by the numbers, if you've ever had one, type of what's more likely. What's more likely? The Penguins, for the first time in 4 years, make the Stanley Cup playoffs, or the Penguins, for the first time in 21 years, get the generational talent and draft Gavin McKenna 1.1 in 2026.
Give me McKenna. I've been watching the McKenna train for quite a bit now. I mean, I asked Jesse Marshall about it whenever we had him on a couple weeks ago now, just if it's possible how this could go down. And now he's in Penn State, and now Kyle Dubas is going to be keeping a close eye on him in Penn State just because he's got that luxury of proximity. It's a couple hours up the road to Happy Valley. Obviously Dubas won't be alone there in terms of keeping eyes on Gavin McKenna, but I think it's far more likely that the Penguins are going to land the first overall pick than they are to make the playoffs this year. If you just see the direction that this team has been building in, it's a lot of youngsters. It's a lot of looking for the future. Again, I'll go back to the goaltending trio. Those three, one of them's got to hit in the NHL almost certainly. You look at, we discussed McGroarty and Koivunen. Those are just two of the big names, and there's more to follow. A guy like Gavin McKenna could spur Sidney Crosby for another 3 seasons. I know he's got 2 left, but who knows what a young star rookie like that does for the sake of, maybe I could play behind him for another year or two.
Or with him, because I incorrectly said he was a center a couple weeks ago. He's a winger, so with him.
That's stupid. Thinking he's a winger, putting up those numbers. I get it's the WHL, but good Lord. Still, regardless, either way, I just think, and this really is just more of, like you said, just a numbers and a vibe pick. But hey, man, I do think it is more likely that they'd get the number 1 overall pick than they make the playoffs again.
Well, let's just look at it this way. There is a number as to whether or not, or the odds that the Penguins can make the playoffs. FanDuel Sportsbook put a number on it, and it was plus 590, which is the 3rd worst odds of any team in the NHL. The only 2 teams worse than them. Do you want to venture a guess who's worse?
San Jose.
Yep.
Chicago?
100% you hit it on the nose, Horwat, and that's why you are my co-host and have been for 6 years, because you know these things. But the odds are 590 according to FanDuel, and I think that that's about right, especially where you see them sitting. Worst odds in the Eastern Conference to make the postseason. But there's not a number, at least not that I found quickly, for them to become the first overall pick holder in 2026, because there's probably odds that they finish last, which, again, considering the Blackhawks and Sharks exist, is going to make it hard. And then, even if you do that, even if you're able to bottom out and successfully tank, as a lot of fans are hoping they do, that buys you a 1 in 4 chance of selecting first overall. 25.5% chance at getting the number 1 pick, which means if you draw a number out of a hat 3 out of 4 times, it's not going to be the Penguins that come out of the hat. And because of that, I think there's a lot that goes into them potentially getting McKenna. And I think the bingo balls have to fall their way multiple times, not just once, but multiple times. I think it's more likely they make the playoffs. I do. Now, maybe that's just me being an optimist, but look at the Eastern Conference last year. It was weak. There's a reason the Penguins were not mathematically eliminated until they were, because the Eastern Conference is a weak conference. It is the Florida Panthers. It is the Tampa Bay Lightning, I would still put up there. And then it's really a lot of, as you would say, mid. That's the Eastern Conference. And I don't think it's going to change much this year. If the Penguins, again, everything goes right, a lot of things go in their way, they could be in that mix. And who's to say if they're in that mix that Evgeni Malkin doesn't say, hey, well, I don't have anything to leave in the tank for. Like, what am I going to hold out for next season? No, I'm done. He could leave it all out there, and that could bring a completely new look to the Penguins lineup. Sidney Crosby, you don't think that he wants to get his team back in the playoffs? You don't think that that is going to push him a little bit further? All I'm saying is if they're in it in March, it's going to be very interesting. I think it's going to be something that we haven't seen before. Even when the teams were great, I think it's going to be kind of a different atmosphere at PPG Paints Arena if they're able to accomplish that. But back to the root question, is it more likely that they make the playoffs versus drafting Gavin McKenna? It is. But again, are either of these scenarios likely to begin with? No. I think both of them are less than 40% of if you brought them to me one at a time and just said, how likely is this scenario? They're probably both under 40. But if you're asking me what's more likely, I'd say maybe like a 35% chance the Pens make the playoffs. And I'll put it at that 25% chance, being optimistic, because that means you would have to finish last to get a 25% chance. But I put it at 25% chance as of today that they end up drafting Gavin McKenna and sending him a couple hundred miles west of where he's currently stationed.
You look at the East, and I know you mentioned Florida and Tampa Bay. And first of all, that's only the Atlantic. Still an entire metropolitan division of mid. I discussed not too, and that's a gong show again. I discussed not too long ago. The Penguins are finishing the season, or at least penultimately finishing the season against Washington. There's no guarantee either of those two teams are playoff teams at that point of the season. That's Washington, who almost won the President's Trophy this past season. No guarantee they're going to be there again. They weren't supposed to be there last year. Mm-hmm. Carolina, I mean, yeah, they're a great regular season team, and then the wheels fall off. The Devils really shouldn't have made the playoffs after their injuries. The Blue Jackets are the Blue Jackets, but they surprised everybody this past season. Mm-hmm. The Rangers might turn it around. Crap. The Islanders are an enigma. They're weird, so who knows? And then you got Pittsburgh and Philly. Bad and bad. Unless Philly figures it out, which is also possible. Boston, don't know what happened to them this year. They could do it again. They could turn it around. Anything could happen in Boston. Buffalo's Buffalo. Next. Detroit, don't know what's going to happen there. Montreal's going to take a step forward. Ottawa might not take a step forward, but might. Who knows? Really. And then Toronto, again, great regular season team. Then what? The East is wild because I also wouldn't put that much faith the way you did into Tampa Bay. Suddenly I'm looking at one team, that's the Florida Panthers, and going, yep, you could do it. But also, who's going to three-peat? I don't know if they can. The East is a crapshoot. I just don't see the Penguins getting to the top of that crapshoot. All that's that to fair. Say, I think the Penguins suck.
Well, okay, well,
hey.
There's the clip. There it is. Signed, sealed, and delivered. There it is. But no, I mean, I have a hard time arguing with you that the Penguins could bottom out. They could. 100% they could. All I'm saying is with that crapshoot, I'd say I have more faith in them kind of putting their foot in the sand and punching back than I do them tumbling the whole way to the bottom and getting the bingo balls to fall in the right direction. It's, again, I hope I'm wrong. I'd love in a year's time to be sitting here talking about, where do you think Gavin McKenna is going to live? Do you think Sid would let him stay in his house like Mario let Sid stay in his house? And if so, does Gavin McKenna have a dog? And how would Sid feel if he had to pick up Gavin McKenna's dog shit like Mario did for him? Like I'm hoping that's the conversation we're having. But again, that is just such a far out conspiracy that it would happen 21 years later. That I have a hard time being able to sit here and say, even in a fairly meaningless game of what's more likely, that, yeah, that's more likely. That's more likely to happen.
Welcome to the late July conversations.
It's exactly what we end up talking about. Listen, we did these conversations for 8 months during 2020.
Hey.
And there was literally nothing to talk about.
And there was playoff hockey to look forward to at the time.
Yeah, and then the Penguins lost in 4 games to the Montreal Canadiens, and we just kind of withered away into nothingness. But we still came on the podcast, so that's what you get in late July, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. But let us know in the comments section what you think of these scenarios. I'll read them really quickly. What's more likely? Tristan Jarry is traded, or he finishes above 910. I I think we finished on the opposite side of all of these, which is great.
Yep.
Also, the Penguins have more than 2 30-goal scorers, or both rookies, McGroarty and Koivunen, finished with over 20. Evgeni Malkin scores over 71 in a very poetic end to his career, or Sidney Crosby just jumps in another elite company and becomes the second player to ever score 100 points at the age of 38 or more. So Crosby over 100, Malkin over 71. That's the third one. And then the last one, the one I really want you to answer in the comment section. What's more likely? The Pens make the playoffs, or they draft Gavin McKenna 1.1 in 2026. Should be fun to sift through the comments on this one. I, for some reason, believe that you're going to be looked at as a genius and everybody's going to think I'm an idiot. But hey, you know what? That's what the podcast is for. It's for both of us to look like the GOAT in one sense and the GOAT in the other sense at varying times on this platform. But that's going to do it for this episode of The Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this one. We'll see you next time.